You're looking at a Sphinx, tucked away in an Ohio forest, 30 miles south of Cleveland, off a gravel trail in a country park, sitting on sandstone that's 300 million years old. This is the Hinckley Reservation, part of the Cleveland Metroparks system, about 30 miles south of Cleveland, the second stop in the Ohio Hidden Corners series. Last time, we were in South Chagrin, looking at a boulder a blacksmith spent years carving in secret. This one's a little bit different, quieter, but honestly, weirder. The trail markers here have raccoon faces on them, marking the short 0.7-mile loop. Though it may be a short little hike, there are plenty of unexpected things hidden along the way. The ledges themselves are about 300 million years old. They were formed by rivers draining into the inland sea that used to cover this part of Ohio, back when Ohio was somewhere near the equator. The rock itself is a type of sandstone called the Sharon conglomerate, soft enough to carve with hand tools, and hard enough that what you put into it tends to stay. The Worden family bought this land in the 1850s. Hiram Worden, the original owner, was a tombstone carver by trade, and ran a monument business over in Medina. So when you see what eventually happened to the rocks on his property, it kind of makes more sense. Hiram Worden bought 56 acres here in the 1850s, built a house, raised 4 kids, ran his business. When he died, he left the property to his youngest daughter, Nettie. 4 generations of the same family on the same land. Nettie lived here for her whole life. People who knew her said she almost never left the property. When she did, it was to go to church, and that was basically it. Sometime in the 1940s, a bricklayer named Noble Stuart came out from Cleveland. He bought a small piece of land near the Worden homestead, met Nettie, and they got married in 1945. Noble Stuart was a bricklayer who had always wanted to be a sculptor. So when Nettie died the same year they got married, Noble Stuart walked into the forest behind the house with a chisel and started carving. He worked for about 2.5 years, 9 carvings into the ledge walls, 3 freestanding sculptures near the house, everything he'd ever cared about, everything that had ever meant something to him. A 3-masted schooner for his father who had a connection to the sea, a cross and a Bible for Nettie, who only ever left the land to go to church, the face of Hiram Worden himself carved into the stone of the land he once owned, a Native American with a tomahawk, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome, and even a Sphinx, and one name carved near the ground, close enough for you to almost walk right past it. Nettie. He lived until 1976, 30 years after she died. He never carved anything else. The thing about this place is you don't arrive and see it all at once. You're just walking through the woods and things keep appearing. Around a corner, up high on a wall, low near the ground, where you have to look twice. The Sphinx is usually the first one people find. It's genuinely disorienting to walk up onto. 14 feet of carved sandstone in an Ohio forest. No commission, no artistic tradition, no school. Just a man with a chisel and a very specific set of things he needed to get out of his head. There are faces carved into the cliff wall, Washington and Jefferson. One of them is up near the top, easily 20 or 30 feet off the ground. People have walked this trail multiple times and never spotted it. I would have been one of them if my sister hadn't pointed it out. The ship is probably the most technically impressive carving here. A 3-masted schooner in bas relief on a sandstone ledge. The level of detail, the rigging, the hull lines is pretty extraordinary for someone working with hand tools on the side of a rock. There's also a tie cob carving. I genuinely don't have an explanation for that one. It's just there, tie cob, on a sandstone ledge in Hinckley, Ohio, right next to the founders of Rome and a Sphinx. The cross and the Bible are near each other. Nettie was religious, so those were for her the same way the ship was for her father, each one carrying something worth knowing. For decades, people had assumed these carvings were from the 1800s. They looked old enough. There was real speculation that it was Worden himself, or maybe his son. It took descendants of the family to confirm that it was Noble Stuart in 1945 to 1948. The carvings feel older than they are. I think that says something about what he was putting into them. The Worden family homestead stood on this property until 2017, 4 generations. It had turned into a small open-air museum. Period crafts, farming equipment, original floors, original windows. Hiram Worden's rope bed was still there. When the Historical Society couldn't maintain it anymore, Cleveland Metroparks took over the land. There was a community effort to save the house. It didn't work and they tore it down in 2017. The carvings in the rock are still there. The house Noble Stuart lived in is not. Noble Stuart was a bricklayer who wanted to be a sculptor. He got one shot at it, under circumstances no one would have wanted. He didn't sign anything out here. There's no plaque with his name on it. There's just a sphinx, a ship, some faces, and a name, carved near the ground, where you almost miss it. Not a bad thing to leave behind. Next up is Latonia, Ohio. There are 200 industrial coke ovens in a field that were built in 1866, ran day and night for decades, went cold during the Depression, and then sat untouched for 50 years. Subscribe if you don't want to miss it. Also, I got my website back up, thebeardedvagabond.com. It's mostly old travel stories and some history, but it'll grow with the channel. So if you're into that kind of thing, give it a bookmark. But I'm Rex, that's Artemis, and I'll see you on the next one. 9 carvings into the ledge walls, 3 freestanding sculptures. Oh, hey Artemis, good girl. Good girl. I have such an awesome cat.